Yo, 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 quarterback fans. Welcome to a quarterback themed episode of Big D Podcast. Before I bring in today's special guest, yes, please subscribe, like, and share the Spunky Spectrum Sports YouTube page where you can see all my content, football, baseball, soccer, golf, whatever you want. Also, check out the Big D Podcast for your audio listeners on Spotify and Apple. So joining us from Florida is my friend Alex, and we've got Kyle Senra joining us from north of the border. So guys, guess what? We're talking about quarterbacks. So Alex, my first question to you is, what traits do you look at for a successful quarterback?
So, pretty much, first of all, thanks for having me on, Dylan. It's always a pleasure to be back on the show. As far as successful traits in a quarterback, obviously, for me, the number one thing you have to have is accuracy. If you're not an accurate NFL quarterback, you're not going to have any sort of success in the league. Putting the ball with the talent on cornerbacks and safeties in the NFL these days, the speed that these defenses have, you have to be able to put that ball on a dime where only your wide receiver can catch it. So I definitely think accuracy is the number one. You don't have accuracy. We see these guys with upper double-digit interceptions on the year. You really got to be able to put that ball in a spot if you're trying to be one of the most successful quarterbacks in the league. And also, another one, we've seen it completely flourishing in today's NFL. You have to have, and you don't have to, but it really helps your game if you can have some sort of mobility. There's obviously some exceptions to the rule. Obviously, Tom Brady, who many say is the best quarterback to ever play. But, he is pretty much been an anomaly his entire career. But having, just this new wave of quarterbacks we've seen with Lamar Jackson and Kyler Murray and all these guys who are able to make you pay on the ground and as well as in the air. I definitely think mobility, accuracy, and then you got to talk arm strength as well. It takes a special kind of talent. We've seen from the new guys, Justin Herbert, Patrick Mahomes coming up, who can launch the ball 80 yards down the field. It's something that your safety, specifically on defense, always have to be aware of. They always have to be ready to watch those 9 routes, those go routes. But I definitely think those top 3 things are kind of the epitome of success when it comes to playing the quarterback position in the NFL.
Well, first off, Dylan, thanks for having me on. I always love talking with you, and I think you've got a lot of good topics. You're a really good leader for this podcast. I think that's the first and foremost. The quarterbacks have to have sort of the intangible, see what to look for. That's almost really difficult. You almost have to just watch so much football to see who are the guys that are able to kind of rally up the offenses, get the fourth quarter comebacks, get those playoff wins, those the key kind of intangible things. But you can also, there's some numbers you can look at too. The 2 that I really like looking at are touchdown rate, career touchdown percentage, a percentage of throws of their pass attempts that go for touchdowns, then also yards per attempt, and looking at, again, career averages across the board as kind of just to help a little bit of an analytical approach to the quarterbacks and how good they are at passing, how efficient they are at passing. And I guess the last thing is just watching the play styles. And I will say to me, I thought it was a pretty clear top 4, and outside of one player who's a massive exception for a million reasons of exceptions across sports. It's crazy what he's done. So, you look at just winning and that's a chapter on its own. But for the other 3 quarterbacks inside my top 4, they all have the uncanny ability to be able to throw in any situation, whether it's clean pocket, pressure in their face. They can get it out quickly, but they can also extend the plays and throw on the run with accuracy, and the same amount of accuracy as they could when they're standing still. And that's a trait that not a lot of quarterbacks can do, that because it's so tough to defend. It makes such a difference. So that all combined together is, I guess, my criteria for making this list.
For me, I think accuracy is number 1, because if you're not throwing the ball to where your receiver is, you're not going to be around the NFL. You need some form of accuracy. Do you need to be Drew Brees, Aaron Rodgers accurate? No, but you can't be Daniel Jones accurate.
Exactly.
And secondly, I look at leadership because to me, it's a great leader. If your quarterback's not just making passes, but helping your team, saying the right things at the right time, staying calm at the right moments. I mean, we remember Joe Montana in Super Bowl 23 when he saw famous celebrities in the crowd showing his leadership. We've seen Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, Aaron Rodgers, Drew Brees, and now Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, or Matthew Stafford, Joe Burrow show accuracy, and leadership. And in other eras, I don't think I would have involved this, but mobility has become a hugely important trait the last probably 3 or 4 years. We've seen Lamar Jackson, Jalen Hurts, Trey Lance, Herbert, Mahomes, Josh Allen, all show not just arm strength, but mobility. Because if you can escape the pocket, and you don't have to be hugely mobile. I mean, Big Ben Roethlisberger could avoid sacks because you could never bring him to the ground. Having that little bit of mobility, giving up not only opens up the playbook, but keeps plays alive. Because we remember like Aaron Rodgers, like using his mobility, throw the ball down the field, or Patrick Mahomes doing the you-know-what throws, or Josh Allen looking like he's about to get sacked, and then all of a sudden throws one 70 yards up the field. Who is your favorite old quarterback to watch? He could still be playing if you like him, but who's your favorite old quarterback to watch?
I mean, I'm a Packers fan, so like Aaron Rodgers counts as old, right? Yeah, I think
he would.
I mean, it's what I was alluding to earlier. He's one of those quarterbacks. Maybe I'm already hinting at like where I might have him placed, but one of those quarterbacks I think can just the way he plays is so outstanding. You don't see a lot of quarterbacks capable of doing that under any circumstance, situation. He can make quick throws from the pocket really easily, and he can find guys quickly and decisively if he wants to with clean pocket in front of him. If things break down, he can scramble around and buy lots of time and find big plays as well. He's got the really solid arm, the accuracy as well to kind of make all the throws for wherever he is on the field. So there's maybe a couple other quarterbacks that I think have that alongside Rodgers, and it's no surprise that I like watching them, but I like watching them because I think they are the best. So they'll all be ranked really highly on my list. So my favorite to watch among them would, I think, just by default be Aaron Rodgers, since he does play for my favorite team. But there's 2 other names I could really say, but maybe we'll save it for a little bit later.
Hey, I wouldn't mind a quarterback if he threw a couple of Hail Marys.
Yeah, especially if really good, accurate Hail Marys. And there's always a bit of luck involved when you're throwing the ball that far, but you look at the ball placement on a lot of those Hail Marys. I think they either decide things before the snap, or you kind of have to read where it's going to go based on some post snap things that the receivers have to figure out. But it seems like he either throws the ball at the front of the stripe, so if you catch it, you're basically like on the stripe, just catch it and either maybe move up a few inches to get a touchdown, or at the back of the end zone. He doesn't really throw a lot of those Hail Marys into the middle of the end zone depth wise, like front to back, but they're always at the ends. And I think that helps the receivers. They know, okay, I'm either looking to aim for the front stripe or the back stripe. Look for either one of those. I think obviously the Richard Rodgers one is probably the most famous one against the Lions. He's right on the front end zone stripe when he catches that. Like that's about as perfectly placed as it could have been, if that's what the plan is. And I don't think it's a coincidence, because it seems like there's a lot of those Rodgers ones like that are. I think of the Randall Cobb one against the Giants. That's the back of the end zone. That's the back stripe. So I think that's why I think they decide it before the play. He decides I'm either aiming for the front stripe or the back stripe. So be ready for that. Whatever side of the football, whatever side you're on, that's where I'm going for. So be ready in both instances. I don't know. Maybe that's just me, but yeah, I definitely love watching Rodgers throw some Hail Marys. Now I love watching them after the fact, especially when you've won. Before the fact, when it's like, oh man, you have to make this or you lose. That's pretty stressful to watch, to be fair. But I guess that's the exciting part of football after all.
So everyone's so excited about this young up and coming group of guys, obviously with the Burrows, the Mahomes, the Herberts, as far as old quarterbacks, it's tough. I mean, obviously I'm not going to say Tom Brady because, he's been causing me some personal misery throughout his entire career. I would have to say he just retired within the last couple seasons, but I'm going to shout him out anyway. I always love watching Drew Brees play, man. You mentioned him earlier, and I was going to try and pick one of the older guys still in the league, but the way Drew Brees was able, again, that leadership, the ability that we were just talking about, just his ability to march down the field. It just, first off the field, he seemed like such a good guy. He was so huge for the city of New Orleans. After Hurricane Katrina, he brought them a Super Bowl. I mean, it's just Drew Brees was always one of those guys that even though, I obviously wasn't a Saints fan, it was always just one of those quarterbacks that I loved watching play football. This is definitely a sad day for me. Really, I mean, his entire last season where he just really seemed like a shell of himself. But that season and leading up to his retirement, he was definitely a player that I loved watching throughout his career, and I was definitely sad to see when it was time for him to hang up the cleats.
Alex, you probably wish he had joined Miami instead of leaving for the Big Easy, right?
Yeah, there's obviously some hurt feelings a little bit there towards him, but he was the one guy that I always rooted for him. Whether he was in New Orleans, obviously the rumors about him coming to Miami definitely left a sting, but he was always just such a fun quarterback to watch, such a good guy, and definitely one of my favorites for sure.
My dad's gonna like my answer, but how about Peyton Manning? Because I mean, not just the Manning family, because Archie was a great quarterback with the Saints in the 70s, early 80s, but Peyton, because a lot of people thought that Ryan Leaf could have been the number one pick in the 98 draft, but Peyton Manning was not just the son of Archie, but he blended humor, intelligence, quarterback play, leadership, smartness, and anything you want. He wasn't the fastest player, didn't have the biggest arm, but Peyton Manning knew the quarterback position and knew the other team's weakness. And I remember one play against the Denver Broncos the year he threw like 1 million touchdowns. Well, everybody thought the fullback and running back would get the ball. And Peyton Manning bootlegged and bootlegged the whole defense, and the Cowboy defense went for it, and Peyton Manning just walked into the end zone.
Completely untouched, fooled the defense, fooled the cameraman. No one expected Peyton Manning to still have that ball in his hand. Yeah, Peyton was, an incredible quarterback to watch. It was him and Tom Brady as the guys when I was growing up specifically. But, you shouted out Peyton Manning. I got to give a special shout out, speaking up, to Mr. Eli Manning too. And, I was never the biggest Eli Manning fan throughout his career, but boy, did Eli Manning give me the greatest moment in practically in my football life. And it's saying a lot considering, and yes, he did do it twice, but in particular, man, that wild card New York Giants team going in, beating the undefeated New England Patriots, David Tyree helmet catch. Special shout out to Eli Manning for knocking off the big bad Patriots and the evil empire of Bill Belichick and Tom Brady, not once but twice. So special shout out Drew Brees, shout out Peyton Manning, and shout out to his little brother Eli as well.
And don't forget, Omaha.
Yep. Whether he was doing pre-play audibles at the line, slinging the rock, or in State Farm commercial, or not State Farm, that's Aaron Rodgers. Who was he the spokesman for, Peyton? Nationwide, that's right. And I think he had a cell phone Sprint. I think it was a Sprint spokesman as well, and he has some great commercials with them too. But Peyton Manning was a great character on and off the field. He was fun. He was definitely fun to watch.
Okay, so now we get to the juicy part of this episode. Top 10 quarterback rankings heading into the 2022 season. I want you to start at 10 and go all the way down to 1. So, Alex, start at 10, go to 1, please.
You want me to give you my full list, or are we going rank by rank? All right. So I will say, there's so many determining factors. I think a top 10 quarterback list can be influenced in so many different aspects. So I'm just prefacing that there was a couple different spots where I really had trouble ranking some guys. Specifically, that 5 through 8 spot was real. I feel like any one of those quarterbacks could really fall anywhere. But my number 10 quarterback, I'm going to start there. I'm going to give it to Lamar Jackson. I have him sneaking into the top 10 at that 10 spot. Obviously, a big part of that is because of his mobility. He is a playmaker in one of the most exciting senses in this new era of NFL football. I wish he was a little bit more accurate. I wish he had a little bit more game management as far as the true throwing aspect of the quarterback position. I do think he's a little underrated, actually. I think he gets a little too much hate, Lamar Jackson does, but I've got Lamar at the 10 spot. Moving into the 9 spot, I have Mr. Dak Prescott. I think Dak is one of those guys where a lot of people kind of overrank him, and I even see some people underrank him. I think Dak has the talent to be in the top 10. I don't think he has the consistency, or even, I mean, obviously the injury problems have been affecting his production as well. But I want to see Dak have a big year this year and really be able to show that he's a consistent top quarterback in the league before I move him up my list a little bit. So I was comfortable putting him at the 9 spot. And number 8, and like I said, this 5 through 8 spot was definitely tricky for me. I think this quarterback might be better than where I have him, but there's so many talented quarterbacks, especially in this range, that I really felt like I needed to stick him here. I have Matt Stafford at 8. I think I might have done a little disrespect to him putting him that low. I think he honestly probably could float a couple spots up, and I think he might prove me wrong this season. But obviously Matthew Stafford was really the only bright spot of the Detroit Lions throughout his career there. Moved on to the LA Rams and really was put in a situation and an offense that he could really be utilized as far as the talent around him. I don't think he's a perfect quarterback. I think he is a little bit catered to the success that is around him, which is another reason why I put him a little lower on the list. But I definitely think he does have the potential. Not the potential in the sense that he's a young quarterback and he's growing, but just the potential to really prove that he is the major reason why the LA Rams are so successful. But I have him at the 8 spot. The 7, I'm moving up into Justin Herbert. I think Justin Herbert, again, one of those young quarterbacks. He has the potential to climb up this list, but there's just so many people in this range that I have a couple questions that can really fluctuate. Number 6, I have Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson has been a proven quarterback in the league. He is somehow become an underrated quarterback in the league. I think some of the problems that Seattle had, I think, put some knocks on him that wasn't deserved. But I do think Russell Wilson is still one of the elite quarterbacks in the National Football League. Number 5, I have Joe Burr himself, Mr. Joe Burrow. I've seen some people ranking Herbert above Burrow. The main thing about Herbert that worries me, that Joe Burrow does not worry me about, is his clutchness. I mean, we saw him in the playoffs last season. No one expected the Cincinnati Bengals to go to the Super Bowl. People didn't expect them practically to even get to the AFC Championship game. So I give Joe Burrow, I mean, he's been reunited with Jamar Chase. He's so much fun to watch at the quarterback position. He's going to be one of the most fun quarterbacks to watch in the upcoming future of the NFL. Number 4, I have Mr. Aaron Rodgers himself. Aaron Rodgers we know what Aaron Rodgers is going to provide to the NFL. I mean, we've seen it before. It'll be very interesting to see what he does without Devontae Adams, which is why I have him down at 4 this season, but he's still one of the best quarterbacks in the National Football League. Number 3, getting into my top 3. This is where I'm not sure if we're going to be on the same page. I have Patrick Mahomes. I think Patrick Mahomes being at number 3 on my list isn't a knock at Patrick Mahomes. It's just about how good the two guys are ahead of him. I mean, really, the top 3 quarterbacks in the league, I think, are almost practically on a free rotate. You can really put them in any spot. But Patrick Mahomes, we know what he does. We've seen what he can do with the Kansas City Chiefs. He's a top 3 quarterback in the NFL, and there's no debate about it. Number 2, I put Tom Brady. I think some people will probably have Brady lower down the ranks. And honestly, I think the only reason because of that is everyone is waiting for Tom Brady to fall off that cliff. Yes, he's getting older. He's getting older. He retired once already. Is he going to be the Tom Brady that we're used to seeing? Every time Tom Brady's been doubted, he's gone on to prove the doubters wrong. So I have Tom Brady at 2, and number 1 is Josh Allen. There's really nothing to say about it. His mobility, his arm strength, his accuracy, his leadership skills. He's got the total package as a quarterback in the National Football League.
It's funny because as I got further down the list, getting closer to 10, it got more and more difficult. And there's really 2 guys that I'm shocked I'm keeping off, because I would say there's almost like 12 to me. And I know you mentioned your top 10 to me before we started, and there's actually one name on your list that I don't even have. So you can even make that 13. I think my number 10, in spite of some of the things we've already talked about, my number 10 is Dak Prescott. Now, he might be what you were talking about, Dylan, of he's someone who doesn't necessarily throw a lot of interceptions, but it's also because he's not necessarily taking a lot of risks either. I think Dak Prescott has developed nicely. He's been more of an anticipatory thrower. He can kind of throw his guys open as opposed to having to, early in his career, having to see his guys be open a lot. So a guy like Des Bryant didn't really succeed, but Cole Beasley from the slot did, for just context reasons, why he dumped off to Zeke so much, having to see the guys open. Dak's gotten better at that. I think that let me see on this list. I think, almost everyone in my top 10 has a playoff win. So Dak does kind of check that box off as well. Come close a couple times as well to a few others. Maybe we'll say for Dallas anyway, a heartbreaking loss to the Packers in Dak's rookie season. But I was pretty happy with that one. I think he seems like, as much as there's been some questionable decisions at time last year in the playoffs against the 49ers, he seems like a good leader as well. Looking at some of the touchdown rates, he's one of the lower ones of this top 10. Only 4.9%. There's really only one guy inside this top 10 with a lower career touchdown rate. So makes sense towards the back end of the top 10 for me. I can keep going unless you want to chime in on Dak at all. I'll go with number 9. Lamar Jackson. Better career touchdown rate, 6.3%, actually one of the highest on this list, but also limited to better at throwing middle than outside the numbers. Number 8, Joe Burrow from the Bengals. And then number 7, Justin Herbert, 2 guys from the same class. Interesting that even though Burrow's been to the Super Bowl, Herbert has yet to even make the playoffs. I still have Herbert ahead. Number 6, the defending Super Bowl champ, Matthew Stafford. Number 5, Josh Allen. And to me, that was really a tough, from 5 to 10, really a tough spot. And I thought it was kind of a tear break to the top 4 being very clear. And so I have who I thought was actually the easiest guy to rank of the top 10, Russell Wilson at number 4. My favorite quarterback, because of my favorite team, Aaron Rodgers at number 3, Tom Brady at 2, and then Patrick Mahomes at number 1.
Very interesting. A couple guys surprised me with your rankings, but my list is slightly different. I think we've got 8 of the same guys, just a little different order.
All right.
So at 10, I've got Derek Carr.
Yeah.
I think Derek Carr, talk about underappreciative quarterbacks. I think people are finally noticing who Derek Carr is as a quarterback. He carried the Raiders to the playoffs last year, won a bunch of those one possession games. We remember that week 18 thriller against LA. With Derek Carr, you could say outplayed Justin Herbert that night.
Yeah.
And I think, the Raiders only added Devontae Adams. So I think Derek Carr, he might not be the most physically gifted runner or throw, but he's a gamer, and I like that leadership. And with Carr, I think the Raiders might be a better team this year. They're just in the wrong division.
Yeah.
Number 9, and I'm going to shock you with my pick, but Aaron Rodgers is number 9.
Wow.
Yeah. Yes. I think Aaron Rodgers is overrated because, yes, Aaron Rodgers is the back-to-back MVP. But what has he done in the playoffs? What has he done in the playoffs? Jimmy Garoppolo beat him twice in the playoffs and won him when he had a bum shoulder in frigid Lambeau Field. Frigid Lambeau Field.
Yeah.
He's lost playoff games to Eli Manning, Matt Ryan, Jimmy Garoppolo, and you look at the year that Aaron Rodgers won the Super Bowl. The NFC title game was against Jay Cutler, who hurt him, sustained a knee injury in that game. Aaron Rodgers, for all his talent, all his discount, double check, whatever, has been very disappointing in the playoffs. I don't care about MVPs with him. You could argue last year Joe Burrow was a better quarterback than Aaron Rodgers, but the voters are morons. They give Aaron Rodgers MVPs because he throws one interception the whole year. Yeah. So what? Number 8 is Kyler Murray because I love Kyler's arm strength, mobility wise. Yeah, he's been hurt. Yeah, he struggled second half of the season, but I think Kyler will finally be healthy this year. And I'm excited to see what Kyler does. He's got a big contract, so he's got a lot to live up to this year. But Kyler intrigues me. 7, you and I are in the same boat with Russ and Herbert. I've got Russ at 7. I love watching Russell Wilson. He's a gamer, mobility-wise, arm strength. And I know some people are saying, well, he's like 31, 32 coming off an injury. I'm like, is he coming off a knee injury? No. Is he coming off an Achilles injury? No. Is he coming off a shoulder elbow injury? No. He's coming off a finger injury. Russ is fine. This is the most complete, I could argue this is the most complete team he's ever been on. He's so unappreciative. He was what, 61 in the NFL top 10 player list? You could argue he's one of the top 10, 12 players in the league. I love watching Russ. And but I also love watching Justin Herbert play because the Oregon Duck, I mean, you probably want him in Miami right now, right?
I don't know about that, but maybe.
But Justin Herbert's got all the talent in the world. How the Chargers missed the playoffs last year is beyond me. Yep. But he's got everything you want in a quarterback: size, mobility, arm strength, leadership. Maybe just needs a little bit of luck. Maybe the Chargers' luck will turn this year. It did in Cincinnati last year because Joe Burrow was 2 minutes from winning the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I mean, the Chargers need some luck because it seems like every offseason they're really just getting hurt or something happens to really damper their season.
Well, even though I think Herbert may be more talented, Joe Burrow's done more in his NFL career, led the Bengals to the playoffs, led the Bengals within a couple minutes of an improbable Super Bowl win. We know what Burrow is. Burrow, Jamal Chase, T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd, good luck NFC North for the next 10 years. Yikes. And number 4, and I may have him a little higher than some, but I really liked how Matthew Stafford played last year. Yeah, he's dealing with a little bit of an elbow injury now, but I think Stafford's a gamer. Huge arm. Finally saw Matthew with a competent team. Stafford and Cooper Kupp looked like Joe Montana and Jerry Rice last year. Oh my goodness. And by the way, who was the best fourth quarter quarterback in football last year? Wasn't Tom Brady, wasn't Josh Allen, wasn't Patrick Mahomes, it was Matthew Stafford.
Yeah.
And number 3, let's see. Wait, I'm forgetting somebody. I think his initials are GOAT. That would be the GOAT, right? Yeah, Tom Brady.
Yeah.
He's only won 7 Super Bowls. And number 2, let's see. This Mahomes guy, he's pretty decent. He can throw for 1 or 2 yards, run around. He's like a pinball. Might throw left-handed passes.
He's
And
not.
then number 1, you know who number 1 is on my list. It's Josh Allen, and I don't think it's close.
Yeah.
Let's see. 9 touchdowns, no interceptions in 2 playoff games last year. And somehow he lost one of those? He lost one of those? You're kidding me. You're kidding me. I mean, you look at it, the Bills have got an incredible team. Josh Allen, arm strength, mobility, leadership, Bills Mafia. Is this the year Buffalo finally wins the Super Bowl and Buffalo, New York becomes the center of the football universe? Why Josh Allen number 5 when he's number 1 on my list?
Well, and it's funny because I'm maybe almost discounting a little bit the rushing ability. Like I've got Josh Allen 5, Lamar Jackson 9. If I really took into account like what they do as runners and how difficult it is to defend, you could make the same argument as these quarterbacks like Wilson and Rodgers who throw so well on the run accurately. So you're right. I could maybe even raise Jackson a little bit to get closer to that. We'll say the top 4 guys all have Super Bowl rings, and I mean, I guess Stafford at 6 does as well, but Josh Allen kind of doesn't check that box off yet either. So, and I know it comes down to, Mahomes beating them straight up in the playoffs last year in overtime, and then the same thing in the AFC Championship game. So maybe has prevented Allen from getting to the Super Bowl. But yeah, I think just the winning aspect's really important, which is why I put Tom Brady number 2. How much he's able to win, how much he has been able to win, and how much confidence that he can continue to do so. So even ahead of Rodgers and Wilson, for instance, not quite Mahomes, because I wonder what I think about, like you're thinking with Allen is that right now the hardest quarterback to defend. And it's funny because on the Full Press Packers pod, we'd ranked the quarterbacks the Packers would play this year. And I had ranked Brady number 1. My co-host Jesse, though, ranked Josh Allen number 1. So he may agree with you on terms of like closer to you in terms of Allen being overall ranking as opposed to me at 5. I don't know if he'd necessarily put him number 1. He might, the Packers owner might still put Rodgers but yeah, I think I could maybe see the argument ahead of Russell Wilson, some really bad third down efficiency. I just have a hard time seeing Josh Allen ahead of Mahomes, Brady, Rodgers, who I view all have cases to be made to make as the best quarterback in the NFL. I guess you can make the case for Josh Allen. You're saying that yourself. I still can't quite view him as the best quarterback in the NFL yet. So I could maybe get behind putting him ahead of Wilson and actually putting him at 4. But yeah, I don't see any higher than that yet. If he wins a Super Bowl this year, that might be really hard to have him any lower than say number 1 or number 2. So I'll give you credit there. You might be ahead of the case if they are the Super Bowl champions here.
9 touchdowns, 0 interceptions in 2 playoff games last year, and somehow the Bills lost one of those games.
That's practically Joe Flacco numbers when they won the Super Bowl.
Okay. We're not talking Joe Flacco on this list, although he might be playing his old team week 1.
Well, and that's the thing. I guess that's amazing. That's 12 touchdowns I think Flacco had in 4 games. Josh Allen went 9 in only 2. So yeah, if they had gone to the Super Bowl, would have smashed those Joe Flacco playoff touchdown records for sure.
But I like your list, Dylan. I like your list. Like I said, I think Stafford, obviously, I think was one of Stafford and Aaron Rodgers were definitely 2 of the bigger discrepancies between our 2 lists. As I admitted, I think I might have even had Matthew Stafford a little too low. I don't know about Aaron Rodgers' 9 on your list, but other than that, I think and then the 2 guys that we had swapped, I think Dak and Lamar, and then you had Kyler and David Carr or Derek Carr. I think those 2 guys are definitely in the conversation for top 10, I will say. With Kyler Murray, it's just you need a little bit more consistency. I think with Derek Carr, like you said, I think he's just a little less naturally gifted than some of the other guys on this list. But as I said when I prefaced my list, I mean, there's so much variance. There's so many things that take into account when it comes to ranking these quarterbacks that you could ask 10 people, and I don't know if you'd get the same list twice.
Another interesting question heading into this year is about all these young quarterbacks, and it doesn't have to be a rookie quarterback, it could be a second or third year guy. So which young quarterback is the most intriguing heading into 2022?
I guess for me, most intriguing is interesting because I am really interested to see what Justin Fields can do, even though I know a lot of people are questioning like his ability, or I guess the team's ability to put pieces around him, whether it's on the offensive line or receivers beyond Darnell Mooney and Cole Kmet. But I want to see like if he, with a new coaching staff, he's got a year of NFL experience under his belt. He did seem to improve towards the end of the year. I thought there were times where he looked dreadful and awful, especially his first start. Took a lot of sacks. You can blame a lot on the offensive line, but you can also maybe blame him for holding the ball too long as well. Even Joe Burrow, I know we criticized him for a lot of sacks last year. Some on the offensive line, but maybe Burrow a little guilty of that himself. And look at the big jump Joe Burrow made, because his rookie season did not look great. So we've seen these quarterbacks make these year two jumps, even as bad as they've maybe looked in year one. And while I'm sure that Fields isn't the only one I can expect to make that type of leap, I feel like he's the one that is being less talked about as making that big team. Like I think the narrative around Fields is almost the opposite of, will Chicago be so bad next year that they draft another quarterback and replace him? And I don't know about that. I mean, I suppose it seems like CJ Stroud might be the real deal, but if you're not getting the first overall pick, you're just taking another risk, right? So that seems a little far-fetched to kind of think the Bears will replace Fields. And because I think the opposite, I think he's actually a really talented quarterback. And I'm curious to see what type of step he can make with this new coaching staff. I don't know if it's the best coaching staff he could have had, but I think it'll be better than what he had with Nagy. And he'll have a staff that's working with him instead of seemingly working against him, which I think even if Nagy's a good head coach, I think if you're not working with your players, if you're a good head coach, I mean, schematically, if you've got a good system in place, but you're not working with your players properly, that won't even matter. And I think that was a big flaw last year with Nagy. Obviously, it was overshadowed by, say, what happened with Jacksonville, which I think a lot of people might answer as Trevor Lawrence's development in year two. But I think Fields might really show a leap that, again, seemed like he started to take at the end of his rookie season. And to be honest, that team was pretty trash last year. So if we see it as a trash team this year, that didn't stop him last year from getting better and working with it and improving. So my answer is Justin Fields, really long-windedly. Sorry.
I almost feel bad for Justin Fields because I think the Chicago Bears have set him up for failure because they've got a defensive-minded head coach with all these young great minds. The Bears let Aaron Rodgers go. It's basically Fields, Darnell Mooney, and David Montgomery. I mean, with a rookie defensive-minded head coach and Matt Eberflus there, the Bears are who we thought they were. I mean, if you put Justin Fields on the Detroit Lions right now, I'm not saying Detroit's making the playoffs, but are the Detroit Lions a more talented team than the Chicago Bears?
Absolutely. I think is there even one position group where the Bears, outside of quarterback, I would say, where the Bears are better than the Lions?
Linebacker?
Yeah, I guess Roquan. I mean, even if because what do the Bears have beside Roquan that really matches up to the Lions linebackers, which aren't scrubs? But yeah, Roquan's probably the best guy out of either team's units. But yeah, it's really tough to even pinpoint just like one guy on 11-man defense that's better, like lined up square to square with what the Lions have. So yeah, no, I think undoubtedly, the way I see the NFC North as a Packers fan, there's one threat to the division. It's the Vikings. I think the Vikings with Cousins is a great quarterback who, just didn't quite make my list. I think he's a top 15 NFL quarterback though. And Again, new coaching staff there, maybe better coaching staff, less stubborn, say, than Mike Zimmer. Maybe that works better. So I'd be worried as a Packers fan of the Vikings, not too concerned with the Lions or Bears. If you put Justin Fields on the Lions, I would say, okay, then there's maybe 3 teams that could win the NFC North, to be honest. And I would still expect the Packers to win, but I would view them as bigger threats than they are now.
So for me, I mean, it's hard, and you're going to be mad at me for saying this, but I think in my mind, it has to be Tua Tagovailoa. I mean, the guy locked top draft pick until his hip injury at Alabama. He comes into the NFL, into Miami. He gets the most media hate towards a quarterback, other than maybe Lamar Jackson, I've seen in a very long time. And then you bring in, then all of a sudden Miami drafts Jalen Waddle. The two create an instant chemistry. Now you're telling me that they're going to bring in Tyreek Hill, an offensive-minded head coach with a run game guru, as they call him, speed in the backfield, speed at the wide receiver position. I mean, when we're talking about young quarterbacks and guys who started to some guys that have failed to necessarily live up to the hype that they've had, I think Tua Tagovailoa is the guy who has gotten some of the most criticism from the media and from fans around the league, and has probably the highest ceiling of any of those young quarterbacks. So I think Tua, I mean, I think Trey Lance is another guy that'll be really exciting to watch this season, really see how he takes over that San Francisco job. But I think as far as intriguing goes, it's got to be Tua.
Stop stealing my guys, because Trey Lance is the not just obvious choice, the only choice, because I mean, we saw Jimmy Garoppolo lead San Francisco to another NFC championship game last year. And then the 49ers basically just kicked Jimmy Garoppolo out the door. Trey Lance has barely played in a couple of years because his FCS program played one game in 2020 because of COVID. And last year, Lance barely played. So Lance is rusty. Lance has got a ton of national talent. And the 49ers may be the most talented roster in football. But is Trey Lance ready to go from apprentice to a star? Because Trey Lance doesn't have to be Tom Brady, Matthew Stafford. If he's a top 10 quarterback this year, the 49ers can win the Super Bowl.
Yeah. I mean, but you know, I like I said, Trey Lance was my backup pick, and I totally see why you have Trey Lance in this category. The main thing for me about Trey Lance is, like you said, he just hasn't had any minutes in the NFL. He's going to, obviously, it's already official. He's the starting quarterback for the San Francisco 49ers this year. But I just think without getting that real NFL regular season experience, he's going to have some growing pains. He didn't come from one of those top tier universities that, you know, gets all the spotlight in college football. I think he's going to have some growing pains. I think there's going to be some games and some moments where we see some of the not good traits of Trey Lance. And I'm sure there's going to be opportunities where we see some of the really positive and skilled traits of Trey Lance. The main thing, as far as intriguing for me, we don't know exactly what we're going to get from Trey Lance. We've seen what Tua can do in the NFL. We've seen his successes, we've seen his failures, and we've seen what the organization has done to kind of build around him and put him in the absolute best case situation to succeed. So that's why I went with Tua over Trey Lance, but I absolutely understand why you went the Lance route in that category.
It's just going to be intriguing to see what happens, because whether you're young or old, you've got Super Bowls, looking for your first playoff win, quarterbacks are always the key. You can't win without them. This isn't the year of the 2000 Ravens. You can win with a great running game and great defense. You need a quarterback to win, and everybody knows it. And if you don't have one, go get one. Otherwise, you're the New York Jets. We're still looking for a quarterback.
Yeah, or the Detroit Lions.
Hey, at least they've got a halfway decent team. Just need a quarterback.
Exactly. But like you said, you can't win without one.
So, thank you, gentlemen, for joining me. This was an interesting, different, episode with both of you joining me, but I thank you for talking quarterbacks, and hopefully we'll turn it into Pat Mahomes to Josh Allen this year.